Student trustee Finsland. Trustee Bloyd.
Muted. She's with us remotely.
Yep.
She doesn't have sound right now.
Yeah, you're muted, I think, Maya. We see you there.
Yes, I'm here.
Trustee Griffin. Here. Trustee Schaefer.
Present.
Trustee Morton.
Here.
Trustee Ohm.
Here. We have nothing to disclose from closed session. 4.3, approval of agenda.
I'll move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Trustee Bloyd.
Yes.
Trustee Griffin.
But she can't, unless she's away on
Yeah, can she
known,
vote?
right? I don't
She
think,
can vote.
you're not away for any known family emergency, correct?
No.
So I don't think you can vote. Is that,
I think that's what I remember. I'm not positive.
99% sure unless someone disagrees.
I think
You
that's
can-
still right.
or You're welcome to participate, but you, per state of California rules, you can't vote. Thank you for joining us, though.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Schaefer.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Ohm.
Yes. Okay, thank you. This, agenda, so I'll get back to, parent committee comment. 5 o'clock. Anyone here online or otherwise? Sorry, yep, to comment on anything that is not on the agenda this evening. Anyone, Aaron? No? Okay. Public hearing for the LCAP. Would you like to enumerate?
Well, the LCAP has been available at the district office and on the website, so this is where we take any comments or public comments on the LCAP, and we'll do a presentation later on in the agenda.
Okay. So there's not an action. So 6.2, public hearing for it. So we're opening, so 6.1 is opening the public hearing?
Yeah, and then we'll close
Close it later?
Or
Or
close it
close it
now.
now?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone out there to comment?
No.
No. Okay. So we will close that public hearing. We'll move on for the public hearing regarding the Mendocino Unified School District's 2025-26 budget and MUSD statement of reason for reserves in excess of minimum recommendation. Which means what exactly?
I think it's the same thing. We have a public hearing now for the budget as well, which has been available for review.
Okay.
So we can close that public hearing if no one has any
Any
comment.
comments? Any comments from the board on that one? Or no? No one out there, Aaron?
I see no one.
Okay, we will close that public hearing. Move on to item number 7. 7.1.1. Meg Kelly Coley, Business Manager, present the 2025-2026 MUSD budget and statement of reason for et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You with us, Meg?
Yes, Aaron, can I share my screen? Oh, now I can. Right there. Oh, am I sharing?
Not yet. Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to present the proposed budget for 25-26. So I'm going to start with the governor's May revision. So his budget in May had a new $12 million budget deficit that was not there in January. So they're projecting lower revenues, mostly on the expectation that personal income tax and corporate tax won't be coming in where they thought it was going to come in. So because of the lowered revenues, it lowers the Prop 98 guarantee. So that would be funding to schools. But rather than cut funding to schools, the governor is going to maintain the COLA and most of the spending increases for schools that he had in his January budget. They also, so the state budget, when they look at the state budget, they look at it over a 3-year period, prior year, this year, next year. And so they are finding out that they have higher spending than budgeted in prior years, and they have built in higher discretionary funding. So that's what's led that's what has led to the $12 million budget deficit. So to address the shortfalls, he plans to have budget reductions in health and human services, Medi-Cal, and certain long-term care programs. No, as I said, no cuts to schools. He plans to shift funds from, quote, special funds to the general fund, and he plans delays in spending, which translates to deferral of income to us and other programs. In the past couple of years, when he had a deficit, he drew down special reserves, but this year he's not proposing to do that. So he's proposing to maintain reserves. So now we're going to go into the May revision and Prop 98 school funding. So for 25-26, the budget includes 114.6 billion in Prop 98 funding for schools, and that's down slightly from 24-25, which was at 117.6 billion. He proposes to delay expenditures or defer revenue to schools. So he wants to defer 1.8 billion in LCFF funding in 25-26, and that's significantly higher than the deferrals he had over the past 2 years, which combined equaled about 250 million. So that's something. We have a very small portion of our money is in state aid, so we will be hit with the deferrals, but it won't be a significant hit to the budget. He intends to fully fund the COLA at 2.3%. It's down slightly from January. And then this next list of stuff are spending proposals that he's going to keep in the 25-26 budget. So he's going to maintain ongoing funding to support the full implementation of UTK. So that's Universal Transitional Kindergarten. So right now, basic aid schools don't receive that funding. That funding's built into the LCAP, so we don't get it. We still have to implement UTK, but we don't receive it. So there is an Assembly Bill 1391 that's going through Sacramento, and it passed the first policy committee recently, I want to say at the end of April, and every committee member voted it through except one, so that's a good thing. So it's moving on to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. And if it passes, it would require the state to pay basic aid school districts the minimum state level of funding beginning with the 25-26 school year. So for us, it runs about $25,000 to $29,000 a year, which is something. He's also proposed to increase funding to the ELOP, so that's the Expanded Learning Opportunity Program, and that's a program we have with CCM. They run it for us. And he wants to increase funding to schools that have an unduplicated count of 55% or more. Currently, school districts that have an unduplicated count of 75% or more get a higher funding. So our unduplicated count runs at about 63, 64, 65%, something like that. So if this goes through, we would get higher funding. He also in January came out with a new discretionary block grant. And so he plans to mostly fully fund that at 1.7 billion, down from 1.8 billion. The funds will truly be discretionary, and they could be used to support the statewide priorities surrounding student support and professional development. And then he also proposes to restore the one-time funding they took away from the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant. So that happened several years ago, and they took dollars away from schools, and then they restored the dollars, but they didn't restore it fully. So he's proposing to give that portion back to schools to make it whole. He's adding ongoing funding to support universal meals and Sunbucks, and then he's proposing to backfill the basic aid districts down in Southern California who are impacted by the wildfires. And then moving on to federal funding, while there are no cuts currently to federal funding for schools, there is concern that if the feds cut funding, to the state, it may require the state to suspend or reduce funding to schools. So that's kind of something to keep on the radar. Right now, we have 4 title programs. We have Title I, Title II, Title IV, and REAP, which I think is Title V or something like that. But the federal part of our budget revenue makes up about 3.8, 3.9% of our budget. So in 25, 26, we'll be getting 407,778 in federal funding, and all of those dollars go to support salary and benefits. So if it's cut, that's where it is. So the deferrals that he's planning for LCFF funding will impact cash flow. So we receive 1.5 million in state aid through LCFF, so it's 15% of total revenue. MCOE recommended that we defer 7% of that, so that translates to about $109,000 or 1% of revenue that could be deferred if it needs to be. So now I'll go on to the estimated actuals for 24-25. So I updated the budget since second interim. And so mostly, it's the budget improved significantly because of the higher P2 property tax estimates. We got a little bit more in state and local funding, and then the federal funding, the net title revenues are down about 12,820. So for Title I, I don't think that we're going to be able to spend it all of the 24-25 allocation in 24-25. So I've carried part of that over to 25-26. So that's why that's up a little bit more than where it would normally be. But all said, we're better by $321,000. Our deficit spending is projected to be $263,000 versus $585,000. And our ending fund balance goes to $2.4 million from $2 million previously. And I do want to point out in part of what made expenditures go up, the $70,000, was mostly due to this transfers out down here, transfers out of the general fund to other funds. So we have two programs that we are running. One is for the electric bus infrastructure, and one is the water project. Both of those are reimbursement programs, and so we've been awarded grants, but we have to do the work, pay for the work, and then we get reimbursed for it. So we're sitting waiting for reimbursements, and so we can't have a negative balance in a fund. So we have to make a transfer, kind of like a loan to the fund. So when we get the money back, it'll all wash itself out. So for this year's budget, that's here in this column, 25-26. So when I say this year, it's not really this year that we're in, it's this year, next year. So I guess I should say next year's budget, 25-26. Taxes are up slightly. So secure tax, I maintained it at a 2.5% increase. Timber tax shot up this year being 24-25 to like 250,000. So I brought it back down to 120,000, and
Known caller.
And so that came in at 7,048,000 versus 7,030,000. LCFF and EPA, that's kind of based on the calculator. District of choice stays flat. Federal revenue, it's up high. It's up a little higher this year because I deferred revenue from 24-25 to 25-26, and then state and local funding reduced for one-time revenues. Total revenues are projected to be 10.4 million versus 10.6 million last year. Expenses, salaries, and benefits have been adjusted for known staffing changes. Everybody was moved step and column. And then I included a 5% increase on the salary schedule because I felt I needed to include something because we will settle on something. So once negotiations are settled, when I do the public disclosure, this will change, and it will change for whatever everybody settles on. let's see, supplies and services are reduced for one-time items and bumped up a little depending on, for like utilities and items, services that, are a little higher. Capital outlay, we don't have any so far this year. Transfers out have been reduced back down to something that's more normal. So we have expenditures of 10.9 million versus expenditures of 10.9 million, 10.89, 10.932. So we have deficit spending of 531,000 projected versus deficit spending of 263 in 24-25. And our ending fund balance goes from 2.4 million to 1.9 million. And we have an unappropriated balance of 874,000, and we still meet the 4% reserve for economic uncertainty. And Fund 17 just kind of sits down here and grows. So this is a property tax report. I think everybody's seen it. And so here you can see this is the P2 estimate. So it's up 8% from last year. And then I bring it back down to 2.5%. And here's where the timber tax is at about 250,000, which, probably is not on. I say it's probably not ongoing, but when you look at this, there's a lot of good timber tax in here. But anyway, bring it down to 120,000 each year. And so this is what our gains are. So for 24-25, property taxes are at 7 million, up 9% from last year. And then next year in 25-26, 7.48 million, only up fractionally. And then 7.2 million, 7.4 million, up about 2.4%. And then this is the multi-year projection for that goes out to 27-28. And again, I explained property taxes, so that takes care of that. EPA is adjusted for ADA. The state aid remains flat. There's no changes to district of choice. Federal state revenue are increased for 1% per year. For the expenditures, all one-time items are removed from all expenditures. Salary and benefits assume a step and column increase each year, and then the retirements that we currently know in the out years are built into the out years. So we may see some savings in those out years. Books and supplies and services and operations, I add 2% per year for COLA. So expenditures go from 10.9 million 25-26, kind of stay at they're kind of staying in this 10.9 million range, 10.932, 10.941, 10.974. Deficit spending goes down to 399,000 in 26-27 and down to 254,000 in 27-28. Our ending fund balance declines, with each deficit spending, 1.8 million to 1.4 million to 1.2. We meet the 4% reserve for economic uncertainty each year. We add in the negotiated reserve of 2% in 26-27, 27-28. And we have unappropriated balances of 874,000, 468,000, and 381,000. And then Fund 17 is projected to grow for interest. So this is the cash flow report for 25-26. As I was looking at this earlier today, I realized that the deferrals, I don't think the deferrals are really going to happen here. I think they're going to happen more out here. So I have something wrong in the calculator. This whole deferrals line hasn't been used in so long that I think I may have put something in incorrectly. The dollar amount that it totals is correct, but just not in the right place in the right month. But I don't think it makes much of a difference because we start the year with 2.9 million projected in cash. We're projected to end the year in 2.19 million in cash. Here in November, before we get property taxes, we drop way low to 546,000 cash balance. And then it bumps back up in December when we get the December property taxes. And it goes low again here in March before we get, an influx later on in April, May, and then we get final numbers in June. So this is the 25-26 reserve substantiation in excess of minimum requirements. So this is one of the things that was part of the public hearing. So we have to have a statement that explains why we have reserves higher than the mandatory 4% or 437,000. So we have 1.8 million in reserves in excess over the 437,000. So if we held our reserves at just the 4% and something happened, the 4% reserves would not be enough to meet 1 month's worth of payroll. So, it's imperative that we have higher reserves. It's important that we have higher reserves because we know that our cash flow is going to fall before taxes are paid out to us. So if we have lower reserves, or if we had just the 4% reserve, we would have to go out and get a tran in order to maintain cash in our fund to pay the bills. So that's what that is. I feel like I'm talking really fast. And so here's other funds. So here's the Fund 12 Child Development Preschool Fund. There's not much changes year to year. We plan to make a contribution of 60,000 this year, and it's close to 60,000 last year. I will point out, the last 2 years when we closed the books, we benefited because other school districts were given preschool funding and they couldn't spend it. So in the last 2 years, our contributions to the preschool were a lot lower because other school districts in the county couldn't spend the money. Fund 13, the cafeteria fund. This year we have a high transfer from the general fund, 148,000. Next year it goes back to more normalized 90,000. This year we had 2 retirements. Trish and Diane are retiring, and so we hired 2 extra people to come on for 6 months to learn the positions. So that would be good. That we should have that next year. Fund 14, the deferred maintenance fund. We've increased the contribution. We've taken it back up to the 50,000 per year. So this year we also had about 3,000 in interest in that fund, and next year it maintains at 50,000. We end this year with, I think, 78,000 as an ending fund balance. I didn't put any expenditures in for next year because I'm not sure what they are yet. So we can put them in as we know them. Fund 15, the People Transportation Equipment Fund. This is where we're gathering expenditures for the electric bus infrastructure. And this is where we have no revenue, but lots of expenditure awaiting the grant funding. So that's what that transfer is. Fund 21 is the bond fund. And so I'm thinking we're going to end the year with 1.158 million. And I have it all spent out for next year. Obviously, if it doesn't work out that way, it won't be that way. We'll have the carryover. Fund 25, the developer fee fund, we took in, I have revenues projected at 45,000, and I think we're pretty close to that. No expenditures, so we should end the year with about 360,000 in the developer fee fund. And the projections kind of remain the same for next year, another 45,000 in fees and no expenditures yet. Budgeted once we know what they are. Fund 40 is the other reimbursement grant, the water project. So in here, we had a small beginning balance. We did take in revenues, 141,000, but we paid out 157,000. So we were short, and we transferred 15,000 from the general fund to the water project fund. And then the self-insurance fund. So I don't know what happened when I did the budget. I think I fell asleep after Fund 40 because I did not put a budget in. I have last year's numbers in Fund 67 for 24-25, but I neglected to put a budget in for 25-26 in Fund 67. So Fund 67 is our self-insurance fund, the vision and dental fund, and it doesn't really change much, but I didn't put it in. So next week's budget that you guys are going to approve has these budget numbers in Fund 67. So I think we'll have a beginning balance of close to 200,000. The revenue kind of stays in this 107 range, and the expenditures kind of move around. So, I think, what 116 is probably better than 120. So I think we'll end next year with 190,000. Okay, so the next thing I have is Fund 63, and I neglected to put Fund 63 altogether in this budget that you have for the public hearing. And since Fund 63 is MCN, and I think in my head, because we were selling it and I didn't have to put a budget in, I didn't have to do it. But I was wrong. I do have to do it. And in next week's budget that you're going to approve, there will be a Fund 63. It will not have a budget because we didn't have to do one. But what I wanted to point out on this is next week when you get the agenda and the board packet and you look at it, if you look at the Section G assets, you'll see that we have negative cash of $275,000 at MCN. We recently made a deposit of 121,000. So negative cash, once that deposit hits, it'll be closer to 154. We will probably close the year with negative cash, and which means that the general fund is going to have to backfill it because we can't end the year with a negative cash balance in any fund. So, the general fund will make the contribution, will offset whatever negative cash there is with whatever cash is remaining at savings bank. So MCN has three checking accounts at savings bank. We'll also offset negative cash with the first cash payment from the sale, which is $100,000. If there is any remaining negative cash as the books are being closed, the district will make a loan not to MCN, but to our own Fund 17. And as payments 2 through 4 come in from the sale, we'll use those to pay off the loan, if you will. So are there any questions on that?
Fund 17.
Oh, yeah, I meant Fund 63.
Questions from me?
Okay. So that's I'm done with the budget. If anybody has, yeah. Oh, sure. Yes.
Thanks.
Meg, do we know when we're getting the cash payment number 1?
I don't know that. No, I don't.
June 30th, right?
Yeah, in theory. So, Rob and I talked today because there are some other things, we're trying to figure out, just kind of timing of how everything's going to work, like the Sonic, I guess that's just the name of it, Sonic, the product Sonic, they bill a month ahead. So, if they're billing, they're going to bill in June for July services, right? So if that happens, then, there's going to be a payable, if you will, due to us, I believe, from Fort Bragg. So, there's just kind of a lot of these little kind of quirky things we need to work out. And I think Rob was feeling and hoping that Fort Bragg would come forth with a little more information. So I've given him some stuff to ask them and to ask Sonic, and we'll see what happens. Any other questions? Okay, so this next slide is about the local control funding formula because Jason told me I needed to do the budget overview for parents. So this goes into budget overview for parents. This kind of tells how the LCFF is calculated, and the whole LCAP plan is built on the local control funding formula. So basically, the LCFF has these 3 parts, these 3 components. So there's the base grant, which is kind of our base funding, if you will. It's our funding, the general fund funds, the unrestricted general fund funds. Depending on what our student population is, our student demographic, we get some amount for supplemental grant. And then if we have a high enough concentration of unduplicated students, then we get another amount for the concentration grant. So our enrollment and our unduplicated pupil count is what's used to determine our UPC, our unduplicated pupil count percentage. So our percentage for 24-25 is in the 66.4 range. And when I make projections, we try and keep the UPC percentage kind of at a steady level. And when we know something more, then we will change it. But otherwise, it can make the budgeting in the out years kind of wonky. So that's where we are. We're at about 67% of unduplicated count. That's our unduplicated count. We have ADA excluding district of choice of 351 in 24-25. District of choice ADA is about 3619. So total ADA is 387.54 for 24-25. And then based on the enrollment numbers, so when I do the enrollment cohort calculator, the enrollment numbers, are trending down. And so the ADA is trending down. I've left the district of choice ADA flat because I don't really know what it's going to be. And so these are the ADA numbers that, are calculated going forward. This is the number of students for TK ADA. And again, I've just kind of kept it flat at 8.5 going forward. So the LCFF entitlement, if we were an LCFF funded school, this is what our funding would be. We would have a base grant of these numbers here in the 4 million range, 4 million, 4 million, 1, 4 million, 2, and 2. And then the supplemental concentration in these numbers, we would get the add-on for transportation, and we would get the transitional kindergarten add-on. So this number here, this 25 through 28,000, that's what we would get if AB 1391 passes to support transitional kindergarten. So if we were LCFF funded, we'd be funded at 5.3 million, 5.5 million, up to 5.6 million over the course of the multi-year projection. We are not LCFF funded, we're basic aid, and so we're kind of property tax, local revenue funded. So our funding is at 8.6 million, 8.8 million, up to 9 million versus this $5 million range. So that's how we get our funding. So then when we look at the amount that we need to increase or improve services, it's based on the LCFF entitlement. And so we have our base grant and we have the add-ons and we have supplemental at 542,000, concentration at 307,000. So we get total supplemental concentration grant of these two pieces here at the bottom, 850 for this year, and then it goes up each year accordingly. We also get a projected, an additional projected 15% concentration grant because of our unduplicated population is above the 55%. And so we get another amount of concentration grant in the $70,000 range. So all told, we have for 24-25, 921,000 that we need to build into the LCAP or spend in the LCAP for contributing actions, and they're contributing actions to support the unduplicated student population. And in 25-26, that's calculated to be 972,000. So a year ago, in 24-25, when we were calculating the supplemental concentration dollars, the 24-25 number was actually 973 something. So this year it's 972, almost 973. And then next year it drops a little, 959, and then comes back up to 989. So now that we have those numbers, I can go on to the budget overview for parents, but Erin, I don't have it, okay, so I'll quit sharing. Stop sharing.
Meg,
Yes.
one of the thyou talk about that we're increasing our grant for unduplicated students. But in fact, what we're doing is we're shuffling money from one part of the general fund into this, category, so that the state is basically telling us we have to spend this money in support of the unduplicated students without giving us any more money to spend.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, yeah, that's the amount of money we have to carve out to put in our LCAP to support the contributing actions that go toward the unduplicated students and serving them. So, yeah, but it's because our funding is so high otherwise, right? You know, I'm not saying it's right, but the logic is we are much higher funded than we would be if we were an LCFF funded school. And so, you know, I kind of look at it as we're being penalized for something that's kind of beyond our control. And yeah, I don't know what to say about it, but I agree with you. Yes.
We're now 3.3 million into basic aid. Did I read that right?
Yeah. So the difference between the 8 point whatever million and the 5 whatever, which is 3 something, that's how deep we are into basic
Yeah.
aid.
I thought that was getting smaller in the last few years, but I guess it's back up there. I thought it used to be like 2.5 million, but
Right, and so it was going down. One, because our projections were going down in the tax projections, and two, when there was a lot of money, the COLA was much higher. So when the COLA is higher, it increases the per student funding, and we were going down with revenue. They were coming up with funding for LCFF. Okay, so this is the budget overview for parents. And so if you look at, go right there, it's good. So if you look at the circle on the left, that pretty much tells our revenue.
2 or 4 at the stage break.
What? Oh, that pretty much tells our revenue budget. So we have 8.7 million in LCFF funds, or 84% of our revenue. And then we have those little pies over there of federal, state, and local funding. And so the circle on the right pulls out just the LCFF piece. And so you can see the 972,000 that was calculated in the LCFF calculator. That's our supplemental concentration grant funding. And that little pie is what we need to spend on the unduplicated students. And it's generated by them, and we spend it on them. And so these words here just kind of tell you what the picture gets, the words that explain the picture. So I don't think we need to go over that. And then this chart here shows what our total budgeted expenditures are in the general fund. So we have budgeted expenditures of 10.8 million. Of that, 1.776 million are captured in the LCAP. So in addition to the 972,000 that we have to spend for supplemental concentration, we have an additional amount in there to bring it up to this 1.8 million. And so, go back there. And so there is a part we have to tell how much. So there's 9.9 million about in the budget that's not included in the LCAP. So we have to explain why we have some amount of money not included in the LCAP. Well, the money that's not included in the LCAP pretty much cover all the other costs that are necessary to run a school district. So we have staff whose positions don't kind of qualify to be in the LCAP. So like all of your admin positions, my position, all of the positions in the district office don't really qualify to be in the LCAP. And so we have maintenance support and technology support and transportation support. A lot of that doesn't qualify to be in the LCAP. So that's why we have so much money outside of the LCAP, so we can run the school. Okay, you can go on. let's see. So this is for, so this is, okay, yeah, the words at the bottom of page 3 of 72. That's where we talk about the 972,000 that we have to spend that are generated by the supplemental concentration students in duplicated population. Our LCAP, we have built in 974,000, 282 toward meeting that goal. So we are higher by about $2,000. So then this next chart shows, talks about 24-25 supplemental concentration. So the top line, the 973, 197, that's what we thought that what our calculated supplemental concentration projection was a year ago for 24-25 when we built the budget. What we actually spent in our annual update in the LCAP is 992,572. So the words tell us that, and they tell us that it does the math for us and tells us that we're 19,375 higher than what we had projected a year ago. And I think that's all that it tells us.
Yes, thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Meg.
You're welcome.
Questions or comments? So does that conclude 7.1.1, next part?
Yep.
And we have 7.2.1, for Jason Morse, presenting the 25-26 LCAP.
Okay, so we'll go through the LCAP. The data really hasn't changed except for the final section. That it hasn't changed from when I presented the mid-year data, since we don't have a lot of the data from 24-25 yet. So not much has changed since the mid-year review. But so here's our introduction pages. I just noted that our suspension rates are continuing to decrease. The English language arts scores are above the state average in California, especially in the middle and high school grades. The math scores have dipped this past year, but are about at the state average. Chronic absenteeism is decreasing, but we'd like to see it decrease even further. I held meetings with the high school staff, the K-8 staff, and I held a meeting for the parents, but nobody showed up for the parent meeting. The main feedback through the meetings with the staff were that they were concerned about the lack of the dedicated EL services that we enjoyed the last 3 years. And we discussed ways of possibly serving our EL students outside the classroom, as well as more training to do that within the classroom. So goal number 1 is all about our EL students. And here's the data that really, like I said, it hasn't changed much since December. We did reclassify 3 students this year, which is great. And there were no differences in what we budgeted and actual expenditures, no material differences. So, like I said, we're looking ways into bringing more targeted services. It may take some creativity, but I think most of it is still going to have to happen in the classroom, within the regular day with the classroom teacher.
So Jason, you said that, I'll use a different metaphor. We graduated 3 students out of the program. How many new students entered?
This past year, I believe about we had 2 or 3 enter. So we're still at about 14 in the district.
And are they entering primarily in the K3 area, or are they entering in the
K3.
K3?
Yeah. All right, and as you'll see throughout this LCAP, the most of our expenses and our focus is on a couple of positions, or a few positions: the social worker, the RTI teacher, our elective teachers and aides, and our mental health counselor. Those are really the bulk of this LCAP. So goal 2 has to do with improving outcomes for socioeconomically disadvantaged students. In particularly chronic absenteeism and our standardized testing scores. So, if you remember, we have these target in year 3, our targeted outcomes. So it's kind of interesting to see where we are now as to where we are aiming to be in 3 years. I don't have too much to say about this goal. And then while Meg was talking, I was thinking about going and looking at the chronic absenteeism rate for the district, so I'll try and do that before the meeting's through of where we are today. All right, so goal 3 is improving student outcomes for all students. So this has to do with our teachers being misassigned, our facilities in good repair, our standardized testing scores. One stat that I thought was it may just be the class of students, but from 23-24 to 24, no, I'm sorry, from 22-23 to 23-24, we doubled the number of students completing a CTE pathway, and I think that's the students, but also the strength of our CTE program continues to grow based on our teachers and the grant funding that Tobin continues to get with our CTE programs. All right, I'm going to go on to goal 4, which is improve school climate, and this is where there's some new data coming in here because I was able to poll the parents, and this was a parent survey for in parent engagement and input on making decisions for the district and school sites. So the last time I gave this survey was 22-23, so it had been 2 years, but every single one of these questions, we increased in the number of parents who agreed with that statement. So I thought that was great that we increased on all of these. The one that feels low still is number 8 and number 9, that they're a part of the decision-making process for the school and district-wide programs. And then opportunities to become more involved. We've gone up on both of those, but I feel like we have room to improve there. And I think one of the ways that's going to happen is I'm going to be doing another 5-year strategic plan for our school district and kind of where we want to be in 5 years and have more of a long-term vision for the district. So that is going to be an opportunity for parents to have that input. So I'm planning that for next year. Then I added 2 more questions, number 10 and 11, on whether parents felt like the school was a safe place where bullying and disrespect is not tolerated. Only 56% there, but then 89% said that their children feel safe at school. And then we were able to do the California Healthy Kids Survey. Oh, there's 2 more questions on there. My child fears that, this is a good one, 100% of the parents said that their child feels that there's an adult at the school who cares about them. But then back down to 61% that they're happy to be at school. So like I said, we did the California Healthy Kids Survey, so I'll get to that because that's new data there for you. So the survey measures a lot of things in grades 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th. So we are required to measure student safety and school connectedness, so I pulled out just a couple of questions. Do you feel safe at school? You can see the 5th grade responses. Yes, most of the time, 74%. So 90% of the students said most of the time or all the time. Obviously, we want that number to be 100%. That 5% is low, but that's unacceptable. 7th grade, different terminology here, but same concept that roughly 80% agree with that statement that they feel safe at school. 91% of 9th graders felt that way, and 81% of 11th graders. Then the next question I pulled out is, do you feel like you're a part of the school? So this measured the school connectedness. And 63% of 5th graders, yes, most of the time or all the time. 64% of seventh graders, 73% of ninth graders, and 70% of 11th graders. So we do this California Healthy Kids Survey every 2 years, so we'll measure this again in year
Could you
3.
send out the complete raw report to us?
Sure. Yeah, I believe I have it now. The high school just finished theirs, so I think I can get it to you. All right, so that's about it. The rest is kind of the budget stuff that Meg already went over.
Questions, comments, insights?
It's good to see a lot of those numbers moving in the right direction,
Yeah.
more or less, even if it's just a small amount. A lot of them are going the right way.
You know, and when I was first hired as superintendent, I did a 5-year strategic plan, and that was a really good way to get staff and parents, providing real input on the future of the school district. And then when that ran out, I did another one that ended in 2021. So looking forward to going through this process again. I thought it was a good document. I thought that a lot of people felt like their voices were heard in the document as well.
All right. Going once, going twice. Go. All right. Adjourned. Thank you all.
Do we need to have a motion to approve it, or is it just presented?
No, it's just presented, then we'll approve it officially on Tuesday when we meet.
Got it.
So our meeting is next Tuesday,
Tuesday.
The 10th.
not Thursday.
Here.
Yep. And you don't have a spot on here for future agenda items, right?
Yeah. Oh, not on this
No,
one.
I don't have the agenda in front of me. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay. Adjourned again.
Sorry about that.